For second grade, I was back in my original school in a normal classroom. I didn't understand at the time why I was sent back, but apparently the previous schools were to help me with behavioral development, which I suppose I needed. Autism was still a pretty new thing when I was little. At the time, I kept thinking that maybe the last couple of years before that time meant that I was being punished for my Asperger's, and now that I had my trains back with the quote unquote normal populace. My parents assured me multiple times that there wasn't anything wrong with me being autistic, that my mind just thought differently, and that made me wonderful. But that didn't give me any relief for the sadness and confusion I had after my baptism, nor did it help with the annoyance and frustration of having it thrown in my face that I wasn't normal, that I probably couldn't follow all the rules that I grew up with because of who I am, and all my frustrations grew that year when a special counselor was called in every Monday and took me away in a white van to a different school campus miles away for social studies. I hated those days. I didn't know or trust this woman who took me away. I felt uncomfortable in the faintly lit trailer in a spookily empty playground, and I hated being constantly reminded that I was different. And it's not like I hate being different. It's not like I didn't hate being different back then either. It's just back then I didn't like having it thrown in my face and feeling like a freak. I held up all my frustrations the best that I could until one difficult morning that I just exploded during a session, and that got me into some trouble with the counselor, my teacher, and my mom. And for the rest of the month, I felt like my Asperger's was turning me into a humongous ass. And the next year really wasn't that easy either. You see, I developed a rivalry with a couple boys that last year because one was acting inappropriately towards the girls in our grade, and I disliked the other one because he was his friend. Looking back now, I believe that my dislike of the boys was justified when he was putting his fingers down girls' butt cracks when they had plumber butt while climbing out the playground equipment. But I think my solutions in dealing with him were not quite of sound mind because he started giving me a hard time on the playground and in the classroom. And because of that, I would often retaliate, once with a note during class saying that if he didn't leave me alone, that I would start a, quote, chick fight, which was probably the most ridiculous thing I could have ever said. I mostly blame the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Xbox game for that one because the female vampires would often say chick fight before or during a fight. I thought it was intimidating enough to say, though I didn't know what it meant at the time. I was only 8 years old playing as a teenage vampire slayer, slaying evil demons and giant spiders. But that didn't make him leave me alone. And I just got in trouble with my teacher and my parents. Again. Although I was told later by my dad that my teacher thought I was hilarious, so I guess it wasn't all that bad. However, during my struggles with these two boys in my class, and sometimes others, there was always one who made me feel better every time that I saw him. He had short blonde hair, baby blue eyes, a mischievous grin, and an attitude that brought a smile to my face. I couldn't explain how I felt about this boy at the time. I just thought he was someone cool, like a character from an early animated Don Bluth film or a younger Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones film. And all I knew was that I just wanted to be around him. I wanted to ask him if he'd like to hang out someday, but I didn't have the courage to do it because I had butterflies in my stomach, which molted into bats. And he even asked me once why I was always hanging around him, and I answered because I just simply thought that he was cool, because that was the only answer that I had at the time. Because I didn't understand what it was that I was feeling or how I could express it. I just thought that it was all a part of my Asperger's, but I would later learn that it was just another part of thinking and acting differently, one that wasn't really okay with. All right, hold on. Sorry, I needed to start this over. It was just another part of thinking and acting differently. It wasn't until that same year that our family decided to move to Utah. You see, my mom was pregnant with my brother, and she needed room for a sixth child. It was only a few weeks after moving out when I learned that the way that I was feeling wasn't part of being autistic, but something completely different. Something that I've never seen or heard of before until I was 10. And what I was taught that could be only worth pity, ignorance, prejudice, and even hatred. And so I hid those feelings away from myself and practically forgot about them for a couple of years. I even developed a romantic crush on a girl who was just about my age. She was pretty, smart, and funny, and also had feelings for me. However, that was the problem. And I'm ashamed to admit that I only had a crush on her because she had a crush on me. You see, I was having difficulty liking myself, much less loving myself, because of my feelings for individuals of the same gender as myself. Sorry. So knowing that there was someone out there who liked me made me feel like I could follow the rules and plans designed for my eternal family. And I thought that it was enough to like her back, but I just couldn't handle it. I was too young and so stupid and perhaps even selfish. Um, and I did think that if we did eventually get married, a long eventually from junior high, it wouldn't be a substantial relationship, and that it would dissolve into a loveless, sexless, and overall toxic marriage that would have come to a catastrophic end. And if we brought children into the world through that wall of fire and venom between us, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. Or maybe I would have cared, or maybe I wouldn't have cared as much because I also feared that I would have come to resent them as well. I was already starting to resent females when I was halfway through junior high because I was told that was what I had to look forward to. Please pardon my dog. He's a bit of a spaz when strangers are driving around outside. uh, but anyway, I believe in my heart that if I chose a heterosexual lifestyle, I would have become yet another stereotypical fragile Christian man with an even less stable ego who feared and hated women, especially my wife, and maybe I would have grown to despise my own children. And often at times when I played a game called Flat Out, which was a video game where you basically played as a crash test dummy in demolition derbies and dangerous stunts with the car. I would often play as the female crash test dummy just to watch a woman get pounded on by demolition cars or explosions, or many cars explosions. And I didn't have any reason for that other than my own fickle masculinity that would have festered into something toxic and in turn would have made someone toxic. And that man, I would have hated that man. With every fiber of my being, I would have hated that man. Sorry. I would have looked him dead in the eye every morning and night in the mirror and wished him dead. I didn't want that man to exist. I didn't want to be someone who would seek to end a life. I didn't want a family to exist if it was held together by poisoned barbed wire and lit by gaslight. I remember how hard it was watching my parents force themselves to be together when they weren't happy. And so I took a step back from this girl, and we both hardly ever saw each other or spoke to each other ever again. She still... excuse me. She still reaches out sometimes, but I don't think we could ever be friends. I've seen how former romantic partners act around each other in an awkward dance trying to avoid any tension, but wind up creating more than they need, and how often at times it just explodes in their faces. And I would like to be friends with this girl. I really would like to, but I don't want to cause her any sort of harm. And I know that we're both grown-ups at this point, but I just don't need or want that sort of negative tension with someone I hold fond memories with. And if she hears my words, I would like to apologize to her. I won't apologize for being myself or being dishonest with myself or anyone else in the name of my own safety. But I do apologize for leading her on with youthful promises of a future that will never happen. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to talk in a formal setting so that I could do it in person, but I think now it's far too late for that, and I apologize for that as well.